welcome to the Rural Well. We are Bridget and Loren, and we are thrilled to have you with us, especially as we approach the U.S. holiday of Thanksgiving. People may not realize that Loren and I are thankful every day for the things that we get to do, and especially being able to reach out with all of you. Today, we want to talk about that holiday and a bit of gratitude. So please join us. Maybe you are thawing the turkey, digging the cranberry sauce out of your can, or packing up that Jell-O salad for Grandma's house. It's time to relax and enjoy and listen to the Rural Well. We know this industry has its challenges right here in agriculture, but we're right alongside you, and we cannot wait to connect and inspire one generation and legacy to the next. So let's get started. Loren, how are you today?
I'm fabulous. And as you mentioned, the cranberry out of the jam, it took me quite a while to realize that they intentionally put that label on upside down. Have you ever noticed that?
You know, you're right. I didn't notice that till I was an adult.
Maybe they didn't start until we were adults, but I remember when my kids were little, we actually homeschooled for a period of time. And one of the opportunities around Canadian Thanksgiving, which actually happened a few weeks ago in October, was to go to the Moortown Museum. And it was very much a lived experience. The individuals dressed in, kind of attire of that time frame. And in the old house, they had started a fire on the blackened cast iron stove, and they would cook cranberry sauce. And so you put the cranberries in there and you add a little bit of heat, and they just kind of pop up. And I just remember my little guy, his name was Micah. He's actually not little. He's like 6'10" now. He's super huge, really, really tall guy. But at the time, he was just so fascinated with these cranberries that were popping, and it's really such a wonderful memory for me of a time that I really got to enjoy that opportunity with my kids. So I'm already nostalgic.
That's a beautiful memory, because memories are probably one of the things that bring us the most gratitude. Is that a fair statement?
I think so. I mean, I think it's always difficult. We also work with kids from hard places, and, holidays are particularly challenging for individuals who didn't have those treasured memories at those times. So if that's you and you're listening, I want to encourage you that doesn't mean that that's your story forever. That just because when we grow up in a home where we don't get those traditions and where holidays are not a cherished time, and there's many of us across Canada and the US, that's the case. Holidays, there's a lot of fighting, or there's a lot of, difficult circumstances or grief. And we're going to talk about grief in a later episode. But, if that's you, it's an opportunity today to kind of take a deep breath and say, the traditions of my past aren't going to be the traditions of my future, and I'm going to change that trajectory. And so today we are going to chat about gratitude. And the beautiful thing about gratitude is its impact on our day-to-day life.
Okay. I bet most of us don't even think about the fact that gratitude happens every day. We reserve it for a special time, maybe when we're being prayerful, or on Sunday mornings at worship, or again, a holiday like Christmas or Thanksgiving. But really, gratitude's around us every single day, whether we realize it or not.
The amazing thing about gratitude is it's actually a dopamine producer. So when you wake up in the morning and you start thinking about things that happened the day before, that made you feel pleasure or enjoyment or happy, it actually produces dopamine. Your brain can't tell that just happened, or whether it just happened or it happened the day before. And so you get that same feeling. So practicing the beauty of gratitude is actually, it is a mental health strategy that I regularly teach. And it looks different for everybody. So I don't mean to say that, okay, everybody has to get up and write down their 5 things, but gratitude it's a bit of a showstopper, to be honest.
I have had that before, where I'm told to sit down and write my 3 or 4 things that I am grateful for. Do you feel like that's a bit of a barrier to folks than when it just tends to happen unexpectedly? I feel like I really struggle to think of those things of gratitude when on a daily basis, it's just easier for me to look around and say, oh, I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, I think it's hard. I mean, the the real essence here is we want to develop a life of gratitude practice. So if we practice it, sometimes we have to be a little bit more diligent. I mean, I'm not sure if there was anything that you had to like really kind of perfect in your life. I'm sure there was. We all do. For myself, it's learning to bake bread. I love baking bread. But I can tell you that when I was, I was probably in grade 10, and it was my first time to make biscuits for my family for supper. And I was so excited. And I read this recipe, and I was really careful with my measurements, holding it up and letting the measuring cup stay still so the liquid was just right. I was really cautious. And I baked those biscuits, and my brothers smelled those biscuits. They thought, oh, this is great. And so they took a biscuit and they went to take a bite, and they were like hockey pucks.
Uh-oh.
So tough because I had worked that dough and they became tough. And so, I had to learn how to make those biscuits so they are cloud light and you didn't overwork the dough. My brothers literally did take them outside and use them for hockey pucks. It was in the gratitude the same way. We can't think that it'll just naturally come to us, because it doesn't. Gratitude is an act. It's something that we work at with intention, and then from it trains our brain to look for those bright spots throughout the day.
Okay. I like what you said about the dopamine too, because when we are having bad days, that's probably why we are told by professionals, think of something in which you are grateful. What could that gratitude be? Because that triggers that part of our mind that just brings on the positivity and that dopamine rush. Is that a fair statement?
It is. That's exactly what happens. I think it's a little bit tough. I mean, you and I are sitting here, and life is kind of peachy keen the majority of the time for some of us. I can't say that that's exactly my story, but so there's some people who are listening that are feeling really discouraged, right? Mm-hmm. There's some of us farmers who, I mean, it's been a really hard crop year in southwestern Ontario, and certainly the prairie provinces have seen a lot of fires. And I mean, down through your area, it's been really dry and then really wet.
Yeah, it just depends where you're at. And you're exactly right. I think that moment of gratitude on the farm, it doesn't have to be a gigantic circus of a moment. It can easily be, we got through this day without having to pull out equipment because it was stuck. We did not have a combine fire while it was dry. Mm-hmm. We just got through lambing and or fall calving, and everybody made it. We didn't have any death loss. Mm-hmm. I think, the moment of gratitude of a family member stepped in to help me today when I didn't realize I needed it. And I really appreciated that. So sometimes those smaller moments can even help keep that dopamine level higher and going.
And even in the midst of tragedy, right? Like I remember, and some of you listeners know that my precious nephew at the age of 4.5 passed away. He had what's called invasive group A strep pneumonia. It's literally like the flesh-eating disease in lungs. And so he passed away very, very suddenly, very shocked, absolutely shocked our family. And I remember even at his funeral, we're Christians. And so I remember even at his funeral kind of just saying, somehow God's going to take these ashes and make beauty from it. I don't know if I'll ever really see the meaning of that, but I know that it still is an aspect of being grateful for the years we did have for him, grateful for the fact, because when he was born, he actually had a stroke at birth. And so, his prognosis wasn't good. No. And yet we enjoyed 4.5 years of this incredible young guy. My husband would load him up and take him for rides and, just some really cherished memories. But in the midst of tragedy, right? In the midst of tragedy, we can look for opportunities to still be grateful.
Well, and we shouldn't think about gratitude being just that one time, again, just that certain day of the week or just that particular holiday. So a question I have for both of us and for our listeners, are we sharing our gratitude daily? Are we giving that dopamine rush to someone else around us?
The beautiful thing about things like gratitude and like forgiveness and all sorts of other, aspects of the human condition is it's actually contagious. Now, likewise, the opposite can be contagious.
Sure.
If I spend my time with a lot of anxious people, I end up becoming anxious. If I spend my time surrounded by people who complain, I end up becoming complainer. I end up becoming a complainer. I mean, the reality is we change the trajectory for our own lives and for others. And so when we encourage a practice of gratitude, it is absolutely contagious to those around us.
That is true. Because think about that. You might not be in a great mood, but you get to an event and others around you are joyful and it's catchy. You feel better about it.
It is catchy. So I'm curious, Thanksgiving, when we think
Mhm.
about Thanksgiving, of course, we're always thankful for family and for friends and for all those pieces. But what is it about Thanksgiving that causes us to stop and pause and to practice gratitude?
I think part of it is you can call it tradition. You can call it, well, this is what we've always done. Thanksgiving has always been a holiday in either country that we think about others and we want to make time for our friends, whether it's a Friendsgiving or a family event. And we get towards that end of the year where we've seen a harvest and hopefully it has been bountiful. And we press onward towards Christmas and the turning of a new calendar. And I think it's just ingrained in us as humans at this point in time of our society to say, here we are. It's the fall. It's either October for you or November for me. We should be thankful. But what if we tried to do that in the spring? What if we spent more time being thankful in other seasons of the year too?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's opportunity every day and every moment to look for the glimmer of sunshine in the midst of it. And like I said, it's not an easy thing when we're in the midst of tragedy. But when we practice it and make it part of our daily lives, it brings life. The beautiful thing about the way the brain works is that when it comes to gratitude, when we wake up in the morning, we think and we're very diligent. We say, okay, what are 5 things that happened the day before that caused us to feel grateful? And we think, and they're very specific. So it's not like you walk through the day, you're like, I'm thankful for my family and I'm thankful for my farm. I'm thankful I live in a good country. Like those are very broad. And yes, there are reasons to be thankful, but I'm challenging our listeners to get specific. Yesterday I sat outside and I felt sunshine, warmth on my face, like yesterday I noticed in my garden a new shoot from my peas are just starting to develop. Or yesterday we were able to get all the hay off and I remember the smell of that hay. It was just such a, I mean, I don't know about you, but I love the smell of hay, even though I'm actually allergic to hay.
Right.
Because we live on a sheep farm and we have to feed our sheep hay. But other than that, I'm very thankful for the smell of hay. When we're really specific and we tap into our physical, like our senses, that's what causes that burst of dopamine to release in our brain. And dopamine is what we call a coddle hormone. It's a happy hormone. And so it causes us to actually feel happy. But the other thing it does, our brain goes, ooh la la, I like that. And our brain starts to say, okay, what are other bright spots that are happening today that I'll be able to remember tomorrow? Mm-hmm. And so you go through your day with your brain actually looking for the positive, aspects. And so when we do that, guess what we find? We find bright spots. And those are what we carry us through to the next day and the next day. I mean, gratitude, I would say gratitude is one of the most powerful tools to use against clinical depression.
So I was just going to start asking about depression, because if you are in a depression, mm-hmm. will gratitude be the thing, or is it one thing that can help bring you forward?
It is one thing that can help you bring you forward. I mean, there is absolutely a role for medication. For those of you who are like, oh, we don't do medication. I would always encourage you to do that in consultation with a doctor, like to come up with your treatment plan. Statistically speaking, I don't have the exact statistic, but statistically speaking, if you have a clinical form of depression or anxiety or any of those severe, significant kind of experiences, then talk therapy or counseling and medication hand in hand produce a really effective outcome, actually.
Sure.
The part of the problem is sometimes we just do one in isolation. If we just do medication and we don't do counseling, I don't know that we really get the long-term benefit that we're looking for, but it's important. And there's seasons for it as well. But gratitude is absolutely one of the tools that can be really effective in a season of depression. Now, I can also tell you, though, that when a person's in a season of depression, it is really hard. Mm-hmm. So if you're walking along someone who's going through a season of depression and you hear them be grateful for just one thing, rejoice in that. Because when you feel like you are in a dark pit and there's virtually no way out, you don't even see the ladder, you don't really see the hand that's, kind of lent down to you, and you have to almost in the dark climb your way out of that pit. And it is hard to find something to be grateful for in those moments is like a superhero capability.
So I was going to ask that if I know of someone in my life who is in that season of depression, you just gave me the tips that I need on how to help them, how to bring that forward, rejoice in that one thing, give them the examples and continue to be positive around them. Show your gratitude because, as you said, it's catchy and you can start to see those dopamine sparks. Those are actual working steps that can be used to make it better for those around you. And that's what we're here for. That's why we're constantly working to give people real, actual tools that they can use on a regular basis. And I like those steps.
Awesome. I can't help but ask, do you have any Thanksgiving traditions or stories that you would like to share? Because one of the things, I don't know if our readers know this, but traditions are actually really important in child development.
Oh.
In fact, so like if there's some recent research that came out, I was talking about with my daughter, and the research basically said, if you and your family go to the same like gross, smelly cottage every year versus go to Switzerland one year and we're going to go to the Congo the next year, the one that produces the most long lasting, impactful is going to the stinky cottage. That routine, it's that like I know, which is amazing. By the way, I went to a cottage. It was never stinky. It was a beautiful cottage. And I remember, and my mom would say, Loren, we only went there for like 3 years. I was like, no, it was like every year it was life changing. It wasn't a year. It was 3 years, but I remember the consistency of those 3 years.
Those are great days.
Yeah.
And I think we have to remember not to be afraid to change those traditions just a little bit, because I remember being a little kid and it was Thanksgiving Day and we'd be so excited because we were going to one of my grandma's houses, and it was just imperative that I watched the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade on TV.
Absolutely.
So, to this day, I still insist on watching that parade, although no one can tell me why, but I do. I diligently check my turkey for the neck because I remember my mother leaving the neck in the turkey and being horrified by it. And as I got to be an adult and it was time to host, I decided we wanted this to be a whole lot more fun. And so my siblings, we started doing a turkey 5K in the morning. It was a lot less 5K and a lot more screwing around for however long of time we chose to be on the move. And we would also have an afternoon with the kids of teams making gingerbread houses for Christmas. You got a little kid, and then the adults, you would get to work together to help make your gingerbread houses, and we would have them all lined up for pictures. And that's how I transitioned from the little kid of me to what we did as adults with our own kids.
I love hearing those stories. And by the way, I watched the Macy's Day Parade, even though it's not my Thanksgiving.
Still, yes.
Amazing spray. I just love it. But you know what I do? Once we started farming here and had our own space, I was really determined that our Thanksgiving meal would come as much from our garden as possible. And so last year I planted just a few. I don't know if you've ever had sweet potato pie at Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Yeah. And my cousin Rianne loves it. And so last year I went out to get my sweet potatoes. Well, it was a really wet year. And so they didn't develop very well. So I came in with my like 8 little mini sweet potatoes and I made sweet potato pie in this tiny little like circular, it must have been like 3 inches in diameter. So everybody like a teaspoon of a sweet potato pie per person. So this year, I think I planted 50 sweet potato plants out there. And I went out and checked them the other day and I dug some up and I was like, we're going to have sweet potato pie like nobody's business. Potato pie all around. So.
Oh, that's awesome. I probably shouldn't laugh that hard, but I like the idea of this tiny pie that everybody gets their little bitty spoonful of.
It was delicious, I must say.
I bet it was. Oh, goodness.
All right. So, Bridget, we've reached that part of the episode where we do catch a phrase. This segment is really when we get an opportunity to read a quote and just kind of let it sink in as to what that quote means for us or for our listeners. And so this quote is by Henry David Thoreau, and it says, "I am grateful for what I have. My Thanksgiving is perpetual." What do you think?
That fits us so well today because we've been talking about how it's not just the name of a day on the calendar. Our gratitude that we often focus on for Thanksgiving should happen daily. And it can help us feel so much better and stronger, and it can uplift those around us. And that's probably the best part of it. We can uplift those around us.
You know, the other part about that quote I love, he talks about being grateful for not just what I have, but also for what I am. And I think that is a really, like, it's just slid in there, but take a moment to our listeners, take a moment and think to yourself, what are some of the attributes, the characteristics, the character traits that I like about myself? Am I flamboyant? Do I just love life? Am I kind of larger than life? Well, why is that? And the beauty of that is a huge gift to the rest of our world. And I know we've talked about it, you know, do people realize just how precious they are? And I think this quote is a bit of a, you know, it's a little bit of a nod to the fact that each of you, every listener listening, is precious. You have great value. And so that's why I love that quote.
I think it is only befitting that for our final question, our last question, which always brings a little bit of humor, it's only befitting that we talk about the little more of those Thanksgiving traditions. So I'm going to ask you, Loren, when you think about those Thanksgivings now or in the past, who's your favorite person that comes to Thanksgiving and probably that favorite food that goes with it?
Well, that's really hard to say the favorite person because, of course, my entire family, my spouse, my kids, you know, I can tell you that this is just going to be my second Thanksgiving without my dad, or actually, this is, I guess, my third Thanksgiving without my dad. And I really miss my dad being present. My dad was just such a joyful person. Like, he really took joy in a lot of things. And so if the carrots were from my garden or things were from my garden, you know, he's, oh, wow. You know, he really, you know, just enjoyed those aspects. And so I certainly miss my dad coming to Thanksgiving. But, at this point, it's my mom and my kids and my husband just being around the table. But I will give a little shout out to my uncle. His name is Uncle Dick Bradley. He is the funniest. He always comes with a joke. One year at Thanksgiving, we had this game where you had to like load these balloons, and he just always brings some humor to the station. So I do love that. But the favorite food. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. What's the favorite food that goes with it?
The favorite food that goes with it is, I don't know. I love it all, but like, I love turkey. I love, we always have a turkey love turkey. But I will say that 2 Thanksgivings ago, my daughter, Emily, who is a mom of 2 and a third baby on her way, so she's super busy, but she made this caramel cheesecake. Oh, bar none. It was
so good.
It was so good. So it would probably be around the desserts. My mom's an amazing pie baker too. And our whole family, we love to bake and cook. And so, everything is very, from farm to table experience.
As a child and still today, there's no doubt desserts are a big part of my world. But when it comes to Thanksgiving and that turkey, I like the stuffing. I don't care if you call it stuffing or dressing. Somehow I'm going to need all of it. And you can't make enough for me so that I can just mow through that fabulously seasoned bread. I don't know if it's the sage or what it is, but I am all over it. And there's always this, should it have sage? Should it have oysters? Is it dry? Is it moist? I don't care. Bring me the stuffing. Just let me at it.
Do you say oysters? Is there oysters in stuffing?
There are some recipes where they put oysters in the stuffing. It must be more of a southern state situation. I don't get that here.
Maybe East Coast, right?
Right.
Maybe like the New England states or something like that. I've never heard of oysters in dressing. But I remember when I was first married, I made this dressing out of a recipe book because I just was like, I've got to do, and I hosted my husband.
Fancy.
And his Aunt Connie, came to me after. She goes, I need that recipe. It's so delicious. And I'm telling you, my quotient for confidence just went 100-fold simply because Aunt Connie asked for the Thanksgiving stuffing recipe. Because, if you can do stuffing well, must be a pretty good cook kind of thing. So, yeah.
Once she hears this, she's probably gonna hammer me on it. But my favorite person is probably to have my Aunt Patty there. Because so I'm not a tall person, but she literally comes to about my shoulder. She's sort of a garden gnome sized lady. And as my grandparents passed and my dad is gone, she has certainly taken the family matriarch role. And I will remember her whizzing around the kitchen at grandma's at her house as a little kid. And she was forever keeping everybody in line and giving the orders. And there was the constant argument, did somebody dump the potatoes too soon? And so the potato water wasn't there for the gravy. And I love that energy. Now she's 84 years old. She still brings that and she still gives us hell to no end on what we do. And the remembrance. Did you remember to do this? Did you take everything out of the oven? Yeah. So I just think she's probably my favorite person to have at Thanksgiving because she's always got this drill sergeant mentality that keeps us in line. And the rest of us just laugh and giggle and have a ball with it.
That's awesome, Aunt Patty. I hope you're listening.
I hope she does. And then she will call me and I will be told if it was good or bad.
Good stuff.
Folks, we are so glad that you have joined us today. And we hope that your Thanksgiving and or your day of gratitude is fantastic. Enjoy. Share with us some of your favorite memories and your feedback. Don't forget to subscribe and give us some likes. But above all, share that gratitude with those around you. It's catchy.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. See you next time. Hey, folks. We are so glad that you joined us on the Rural Well, and we hope that you found a nugget of wisdom in our chat today. But listening to our podcast is a drop in the bucket if you are struggling. So we encourage you to reach out in whatever way you are able to ensure that you get the help that you need to thrive. If at any time you are in crisis and cannot keep yourself safe or your loved one safe, please call 911 or visit your nearest hospital. We are delighted that you chose to spend your time with us, and we want to hear from you. So drop us a note and be sure to tune in next time to the Rural Well, and remember, you were made to thrive.